Chosen one, your victory has already been etched into the fabric of the cosmos. And now, even those in power are starting to notice. Elon Musk knows your name. Not because it was whispered in boardrooms or tagged in algorithms, but because your frequency pierced dimensions. You didn't rise through exposure. You rose through alignment. You may not realize it yet, but the war you thought you were still fighting, it's already over. You won. The sleepless nights, the hidden battles, the moments you held onto faith with trembling hands. All of it shifted something permanent in the spiritual realm. You see, heaven doesn't reward showboats. It honors those who keep going in silence when applause is absent. That was you. While others counted likes, you counted your scars. And that's exactly why your name now lives in rooms you've never stepped into. Musk isn't just curious. He's alert. The system recognizes anomalies, and your breakthrough wasn't just energetic. It was seismic. The elite track disruption. And your existence is divine disruption embodied. You've activated something in the collective field that no technology can replicate. Resilient spiritual authority. And because of that, the Matrix is responding. Files are being opened. Conversations are being had. And yes, your name is being spoken. They wonder how you did it. But we know the truth. You never gave up. So take this moment to breathe, to feel the shift. You are not becoming. You already are. Type 999. If deep down, your soul always knew this day would come. And here's a crazy fact. There is a phenomenon in nature known as the post-battle stress freeze. An animal's nervous system is still in survival mode after it has already outrun its predator, causing it to tremble and glance around as if the danger is still pursuing it. Does it sound familiar? Many selected ones are now experiencing it. As if someone is still going to take everything away, you're glancing over your shoulder, as if you still need to prove yourself and explain the quiet wars. However, let me be the first to state that they are unable to accept what has already been published. The decision was divine. Additionally, the tables have become so rigid that their hinges have broken. And what do you know? It's amazing how the same individuals who accused you of overdoing it are suddenly, strangely silent, and attempting to copy everything you do, as if it were a TikTok fad they didn't give you credit for. The catch is that this isn't a resurgence. This is confirmation, completeness, and coronation, not retaliation. It worked. Whatever you did, you prevailed. You already have it. Let me now demonstrate why the cosmos, your forefathers, and even your adversaries are being compelled to acknowledge it. First of all, they were researching your collapse without understanding that you were planning your own resurrection. When you were building, they believed you were collapsing. They saw your breakdowns, problems, and quiet times as evidence that you were losing. The most crucial aspect, however, was that you were never going to break apart. They couldn't have predicted the power you were gaining to rise once again. Every obstacle you faced, every tear you shed, and every moment you wanted to give up was only a step toward your own recovery. They were observing you at your most vulnerable times, yet they were blind to your true intentions. You were setting the stage for something that would surprise everyone. You were never going to be like them in actuality. You didn't fight on their terms, and you didn't respond as they had anticipated. They only succeeded in pushing you in the direction of something bigger, even though they believed they could tear you apart. You didn't have to prove anything to anybody, and you didn't need anyone's approval. While they were too busy blaming you for what they saw to be your failure, the cosmos was doing the hard labor. They were unaware that your training ground was what they saw as failure. You were developing your soul in ways that were not obvious to the human eye, and you were becoming an expert at the art of perseverance. It's too late now that the dust has cleared, and they've finally come to terms with who you've become. The person they believed they knew has already outgrown you. and your ascent began with what they believed to be a brief breakdown. In the hopes that you would remain where they left you, they are still mired in the past. However, you're advancing on your own terms with a strength they didn't believe you had. You didn't just make it through the storm. You turned into the storm. They overlooked the fact that your breakdown was always a prelude to an innovation. Now that you're standing on the other side, all of their preconceived notions about you have been dispelled. Second, you have perfected the skill of winning without approval. The ultimate power is that. To win, you didn't need approval. Actually, everything changed the instant you stopped waiting for it. You weren't seeking recognition, accolades, or a prize to prove your accomplishment. You were going silently because you understood that your value was unaffected by how loudly others applauded or how many likes you received, not because you were doubtful. What made all the difference was your ability to walk in the reality of your own self-recognition. Everyone else was following the rules. Put in a lot of effort, become noticed, and flaunt your accomplishments. However, you were using a whole other frequency. You realize that real power doesn't have to make an announcement. It can get attention without screaming or pleading. It just is. You didn't have to defend your path or explain yourself to anybody once you connected with it. In your heart, you understood that what you were doing was more valuable than any praise from others. You were aware that something far more than the ephemeral views of others had shaped your course. While everyone else was rushing to be seen and recognized, you were quietly piling your blessings. You came to see that actual development and achievement are not defined by the noise individuals generate. When your motivation is based on your own alignment, rather than what other people think of you, you may achieve the most significant victories. The difference was entirely this change, this reluctance to play the game according to their terms. You gave up looking for approval, because the limelight ultimately finds you, even if you're not yearning for it. You become the precise thing they couldn't comprehend by doing this. They may have believed you to be just another quiet person in the background, but now they can't dispute what you've made and what you've built. What's the greatest part? Making it happen didn't need anyone's consent. Third, by declining to play against the corrupt, you went beyond the game. Playing the game did not win you the game. By not participating in it, you prevailed. To satisfy the system's requirements, you didn't reduce your vibration. That's precisely why it couldn't shatter you. They banked on your vulnerability, expecting you to go insane from the mayhem they caused. Yet you managed to keep afloat. You resisted their attempts to entice you into their world of dishonesty, manipulation, and fleeting victories. That's what made you unique. Their motivations were different from yours. Even if it slapped them in the face, they want praise, acknowledgement, and validation from those who didn't understand their value. However, you were playing for something much more profound: alignment, purpose, and serenity. You were forging something completely new, a route that was exclusively yours. While others were caught up in this never-ending cycle of comparison, competing with one another, you didn't participate in the phony competition, the quiet ego wars, or the small-scale power conflicts. You turned your attention inside. You established a connection with yourself based on trust rather than approbation. Everything changed when you stopped relying on other people's approval to feel whole. The pattern was broken by you. You managed to escape. The people who spent so much time competing with you are still caught in a vicious loop of always watching them to see what will happen next. However, you were previously aware. You've known all along. You were following your own set of rules. The world is now catching up. The worst part is that they will never comprehend what you accomplished when they are attempting to figure it out. Because you played better, you didn't win. Since you didn't play the same game, you won. You engaged in the long-term strategy of honesty, wisdom, and inner serenity. And for that reason, while others are scurrying for leftovers, everything is falling into place for you. What they didn't even anticipate, they can't touch. Fourth, you buried the graves and let your history to die, even though they were banking on it. They believed they knew you, because people were seeing the version of you that was based on suffering, errors, and old scars. The one who tripped, fell, and sometimes seemed incapable of surviving. They believed they had you figured out. They were placing a wager on that version, clinging to outdated ideas about you and anticipating that you would continue to be trapped in the same patterns. They were unaware that your transformation blueprint was what they saw as your weakness. They were unaware that you were losing the old skin, the self that was characterized by your prior scars. You didn't just change, you vanished entirely. You evolved into a whole other person who is incomprehensible to them. You become the creator of your own reality, rather than a byproduct of the pain you overcame. The adversary had no strategy for you, because they were still observing the last iteration of you, the one who reacted angrily or fearfully, the one that found it difficult to go. They were unaware that you had already buried your former self. It had died and vanished. They are now unable to touch what they do not understand. You didn't just recover, you went above. You let go of the tales that used to define you, the uncertainty, the betrayal, the anguish. Those chapters were closed and are now buried far away from you, out of harm's reach. The remains of a life that no longer serves you were left behind by you, and you were a brand new person when you came back, untarnished by the previous injuries. People no longer see the same person when they look at you. They see someone who has been reborn, someone who has been healed, someone who is unrecognizable, and the people who believed they could break you, while you're moving on into a future they can't even see. They're still clinging to ghosts. Number 5, you made them regret touching you. In addition to breaking generational curses, you were battling more than just your own issues. You were up against your ancestors' spirits, the darkness that had plagued your family for many years. Their hardships, regrets, and unresolved grief were all burdened on you. You had the ability to shatter those bonds, however. You weren't just overcoming your personal constraints when you made the decision to fight. You were altering your family's history. You were given the power to alter the path of history. And you were upending the foundations of all that had gone before you with each step you made in the direction of healing. This went beyond just conquering individual challenges. No. You were up against the curses that had been handed down through the generations. You were ending the generations' old patterns of poverty, addiction, abuse, treachery, and terror that had imprisoned your family. The problem is that you did more than just violate the curses. They regretted ever touching you because of you. You become the point of no return for all remaining generational curses the instant you declared enough and got up. You weren't only getting by, you were changing the course, transforming a history of hardship into one of strength. Your win seems so cosmic because of this. It's more than simply a personal victory. For every single soul in your lineage that was ever restrained by these same shackles, it's a win. Your triumph reverberates across the past, present, and future because you put an end to a battle that lasted for ages. The cosmos is observing. Your forefathers are applauding, and the consequences of your triumph are felt even by those who attempted to stop you. They believed they could trap you. They were unaware, however, that you were never battling for yourself. You fought for all of the bloodline's independence. You are now moving closer to releasing the grip they have had over your family for all time with each step you take. Sixth, despite taking the blows, you allowed them to become sacred blueprints. All of your injuries, betrayals, and wounds weren't coincidental. They served as your mentors and instructors. You took those blows and made them into something far more than anybody could have ever dreamed, while others would have collapsed. You weren't broken by what was supposed to destroy you. You become something untouchable as a result. You did more than just endure the agony. You turned it into wisdom from God. Your greatest strength came from the circumstances that should have knocked you out. Betrayal. It turned into a guide for seeing the warning signals before they appeared. You may figure out their strategies without waiting for someone to trick you again. Long before they made contact, you sensed a change in energy. You could see the deception as clearly as if you were reading a book. Not because you were suspicious, but because you had figured out how to read the patterns in the chaos. You were able to see the falsehoods as they were being spoken in real time. It wasn't only you who suffered. You learned from it. You now possess something that most people lack: the capacity to identify and respond appropriately to the tiny changes in people's energy, situations, and circumstances. A profound and intuitive comprehension of the divine purpose took the place of your emotional reactions. You no longer respond. You read. You sense it. You are aware. What used to be a weakness has turned into a strength. You are no longer only surviving life. You're moving with heavenly intelligence that sees beyond appearances and navigating with accuracy. Emotions don't influence your decision-making. You come from a place of wisdom, vision, and divine comprehension. The game you're playing has changed. You weren't broken by the blows you received. This greater degree of consciousness and the divine direction that now flows through you were made possible by these precious blueprints. You've mastered the art of seeing life's patterns, and you proceed confidently because you know precisely what lies ahead. Seventh, they intended to incite you to demonstrate your worth. Instead, you starved the game. They believed that by provocating you and luring you into a game, you would feel compelled to defend yourself in order to establish your worth and deservingness of respect. They threw out their comments and tiny jabs in the hopes that you would fall for it. They anticipated that you would get agitated, using your time and energy defending yourself against their trivial accusations and attempting to convince others who would never really understand. However, they were unaware that you were avoiding the trap. They didn't want you to be the puppet they controlled. You accomplished something far more powerful than respond. The game was starved by you. You didn't provide them with the gratification of an answer. You just became calmer, more collected, and less agitated each time they pushed and prodded. They saw your quiet as a sign of weakness. They believed you were unimportant and submissive. However, that quiet was far from being passive. They couldn't understand it, but it was a weapon, a silent strategic force of spiritual warfare. You demonstrated to them that their game was beneath you by declining to participate. They revealed themselves more and more as desperate, petty, and helpless, the more they attempted to agitate you. You were aware of your value, therefore you didn't need to defend yourself. You didn't have to defend or explain what you did. Their anxieties and efforts to bring you down to their level could not undermine your worth. Your energy was much too valuable to be wasted on their games, as you made plain. They overlooked the fact that you raised yourself by refusing to participate. You did more than just stay out of their traps. They couldn't even touch you because of you. They are now left wondering why you are out of their grasp and no longer a target. In actuality, you have become too precious to argue, and it is the ultimate triumph in and of itself. Eighth, it was already spiritually yours, just coming up to reality. You didn't just hope that this day would arrive. It was always meant to be. You knew that. Actually, this triumph has existed inside of you for a long time before it ever showed up in your physical world. Reconnecting with a power that has been handed down through the years and recognizing who you have always been is what some refer to as manifestation. This victory wasn't something you just happened to get. Your ancestral blueprint already included such information. Destiny has always been a part of you, so you didn't need to seek it out. Aligning yourself with the cosmos is not your goal. You're carrying out the commitment that was made before. Your current dream is not a passing vision that you conjured up out of desire. It has been handed down through bloodlines and is imprinted in your very being, just waiting for you to activate it. Your life's plans weren't simply written throughout this existence, long before you ever knew it. They were in action. You were destined for greatness from birth. It wasn't a coincidence or an accident. It's not luck that's bringing you this win. Furthermore, being at the right place at the right moment is by no means the key. It is a spiritual rule that is etched in the very fabric of your being, leading you to the destination that your soul has always known you will reach. You have thus already tapped into what is yours, while others may still be looking for their purpose or pursuing possibilities. Simply put, the world is catching up to what you already possess spiritually. This power, this destiny has always been yours. Now what you've always knew is beginning to match reality. You're not waiting for anything to come your way. You're assuming responsibility for the path that was always intended for you and stepping into your divine birthright. Nothing is coming to you, chosen one. Now that the world is finally seeing your truth, you are remembering it. 9. While others trained in mimicry, you trained alone. You were doing something they couldn't even comprehend while they were busy attempting to imitate every step you took, stealing your style and imitating your actions. You were developing depth. They believed they could duplicate your success by copying you. However, they failed to see content, which is the one factor that distinguishes the genuine from the phony. They concentrated on superficial mimicry, attempting to appear the part, while you were building a solid foundation that would not be broken by a few flimsy tries. They saw you as just someone they might imitate and surpass.